Headlines. New Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan vows aggressive measures to boost the Korean economy. He warned of a scenario for Korea similar to Japan's 20-year deflationary spiral. A week to go till Korea's largest ever by-elections. We get a preview. And Israeli forces in Hamas continue to trade shelling and rocket attacks, prompting some U.S. and European airlines to suspend their flights to Israel. Hello and welcome to Primetime News, live from Seoul. I'm Kang Tae-ri.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for joining us this evening. We begin with the broad strokes being painted by the nation's finance minister on the portrait of the Korean economy, where Choi Kyung-hwan stressed the need for bold and aggressive monetary policy.
His message comes with a strong warning that the Korean economy could face a dire situation similar to Japan's lost 20 years of growth. Our Connie Kim starts us off.
First, let me recap Japan's lost 20 years. It can be summarized as 1, the asset bubble burst, 2, increase of household debt, and 3, deflation. So just how similar is the Korean economy to Japan's? Korea's housing prices had peaked in 2006, but since 2009, there has been an accelerating downward trend. The country's household debt topped $1 trillion last year, surpassing the 85% of the GDP threshold, a level that some think tanks believe is dangerous. Now, it means people will shy away from spending. Deflation had also been a talking point for some time in Korea. Korea's inflation has been kept below the lower end of the central bank's target band, and hence Minister Choi's strong warning today, saying should the Korean economy stay the course, it could face a situation similar to Japan's 20 years of lost growth. But an expert that I spoke to says Korea's structural economic difference from Japan could be its saving grace. Let's take a listen.
In the case of Korea, the nation's export dependency is fairly high compared to Japan, so even on cases of domestic demand, Korea can use this to overcome the economic crisis.
Now, experts say Japan's Abenomics, designed to reflate the Japanese economy, has been working more or less. Now, will Choi Kyung-hwan-nomics pledging aggressive measures to boost the Korean economy work? Well, we'll have to wait and see, as the government is expected to lay out its economic policy direction on Thursday. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And as our Connie just pointed out, Korea is a heavily export-driven economy. Almost a quarter of its total exports go to a single country, that is China. And our Hwang Jae takes a look at different areas of the Korean economy where a heavy Chinese presence can be spotted.
Korea's Myeongdong shopping district is a beehive of activity at all hours of the day, and that activity is driven more and more by Chinese customers these days.
We have more Chinese customers than Koreans because there are a lot of tourists here. They also buy far more products than local residents because they're cheaper here than in China.
And the amount of money Chinese tourists spent in Korea on credit cards shot up over 80% last year to around 3.8 trillion won, or roughly $3.7 billion from the same period a year ago. That's almost half of what all foreigners spent in Korea. Chinese investors have also taken a greater interest in Korea. They funneled more than $1.3 billion into Korea's securities market from December last year through May this year. That's the largest amount of any country. Experts, however, point out the risks of too much Chinese capital flowing into the country.
Chinese investors could have speculative purposes when coming into the Korean market, and if that money exits the country all at once, it could have a major negative impact on the local market.
In terms of exports, which is Korea's traditional growth engine, China's hold on the domestic economy grows even stronger. Last year, China took up almost 60% of Korea's trade surplus, while that figure stood at less than 8% in 1998. Experts add that it's important for Korean companies to continue improving their products and services so they can keep on attracting Chinese customers and their money. 황지혜, Arirang News.
And staying with the Korea-China theme, Korea's Shinhan Bank and the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China began directly trading their local currencies this week in a significant first step toward establishing a broader yuan direct trading market. Our Kim Jian tells us how this is expected to benefit traders of both countries.
Just an hour car ride away from the capital city of Seoul, there's a factory in the city of Gumpo owned by KCC Incorporated, a machine manufacturer based in Korea. This factory agreed to deliver its products to its Chinese partners worth more than $1.4 million in the coming months.
We want to start paying in the yuan when we do business in China, since it will cut down our costs. But what we're concerned of, as a small and mid-sized company, is possible risk incurred due to a sudden fluctuation of the yuan. We have more information when trying to predict the value of the US dollar compared to that of the yuan.
Only about 1% of Korean companies currently settle their trading bills with their Chinese partners using the Chinese currency. 027 Incorporated, a Korean clothing manufacturer for toddlers, is one of them. With sales of around $236 million last year and more than 200 stores across China, the company has been making payments in the yuan for the past 3 years.
We currently save company payments by 1% every year by paying in the yuan. We asked our Korean subcontractors at the early stages of the contract to use the yuan and they agreed to it.
The company says it has not yet experienced any currency risk stemming from the sudden fluctuation of the value of the yuan, which is partly pegged to foreign currencies selected by the Chinese government. But it suggests Beijing could do more to raise transparency by sharing its financial policies and vision so that more business entities will want to trade in its currency. The global trade volume settled in the yuan amounted to 4.6 trillion yuan, or $741 billion last year, and was one of the most used currencies in the world. Kim Jian, Arirang News.
After Korea's most wanted man was found dead earlier this week, Korean authorities have been under heavy criticism given that they were looking for a man who had been dead for 40 days or so. Our Park Ji-won has more.
Yoo Byung-hun's body was first brought to the attention of police in Korea's southwestern city of Suncheon on June 12th. The location is critical as this is the last place the 73-year-old fugitive was seen alive at the end of May. The city and its surrounding areas had been the focal point of the manhunt, but despite this, police failed to consider the body might be that of Yoo Byung-hun. Police say they couldn't make the seemingly simple connection because the body had already severely decomposed and it was proving hard to recover fingerprints. It doesn't stop there, however, as there are other factors adding to the criticism that the police wasted precious time and resources searching for a dead man. The body was wearing an expensive Italian jacket and had a cloth bag with the phrase, "Love Like a Dream" stitched on it, which is the title of Yoo's book. Since the identity of the body was confirmed to be Yoo, the head of the local police station, which first received word about the body, has been relieved of his duties. Prosecutor General Kim Jin-tae has also ordered an investigation into why it took nearly 40 days to confirm Yoo's identity and on whether there were any problems in the process. The lack of police-prosecutor coordination is also coming in for criticism. Prosecutors reissued an arrest warrant for Yoo on Monday after the previous 6-month warrant expired. However, it wasn't until Tuesday that the news broke out that the police found the body, meaning prosecutors didn't know about its existence until Monday. Meanwhile, the nation's financial authority has begun proceedings to impose massive penalties against several financial institutions and dozens of executives and company officials who had granted bad loans to the Yoo family or his ailing companies. The Financial Supervisory Service has just completed its special investigation on some 30 institutions, and the penalties will be dished out in the fall. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And prosecutors today revealed that a close aide to the billionaire said the shipping tycoon narrowly evaded authorities by hiding in a secret closet when police and prosecutors raided his vacation home back in May. The house sits about 2.5 kilometers from where Yu's body was found a few weeks later. Korea and Japan resumed talks in Seoul on Wednesday on the Japanese military's forced sexual enslavement of women before and during World War II. It marks the first such meeting since Tokyo went back and reviewed its 1993 Kono Statement, in which the Japanese government apologized for its wartime atrocities. An official at Seoul's foreign ministry said Korea issued a formal complaint over Japan's review and once again called on Tokyo to compensate victims. The two sides did not, however, discuss the possibility of a ministerial-level meeting next month on the sidelines of the ASEAN Regional Forum in Myanmar. Well, two victims of the Japanese military sexual enslavement of women during World War II have set out on a mission all the way to the United States to spread awareness about the highly emotional issue. Our Yu Lian tells us more.
When they were in their teens, Yuk-sun and Kang Yu-chul were forced to serve as sex slaves at Japanese, quote, comfort stations or military brothels. Today, they are reaching out to make sure their story isn't forgotten. In a press briefing in Los Angeles, the two ladies, now both in their 80s, emphasized they don't have much time left and repeated a decades-old call to the Japanese government to issue a fresh apology.
It's as if the Japanese government is putting off apologizing and is just waiting for us to all die, but we must receive an apology.
I will never forget that we've had to go through this, and I will repay what I've had to go through even after I die.
Lee and Gang also expressed appreciation for a statue dedicated to the women put up in the city of Glendale, California, and offer support to keep it there. A group of Japanese Americans sued the city back in February, demanding the statue be removed. The city of Glendale is fighting back.
The next step will be for the court to decide the motion to dismiss, and hopefully the court will agree with us that the city of Glendale has the right to express its respect.
The two ladies will continue on their journey, which will take them to the East Coast and other monuments put up in memory of all those who suffered under Japan's institutionalized sexual slavery in Virginia and New Jersey. They'll also continue to hold out hope that the Japanese government issues a sincere apology and makes reparations to the few dozen victims who remain alive today. Yurian, Arirang News.
Just a week to go until Koreans head to the polls for the July 30th by-elections. 15 parliamentary seats are up for grabs, largest number ever for vacant assembly seats in Korea's history.
Rival parties have begun bracing themselves for the big day, as well as a two-day early voting period that starts this Friday. Ji Myung-gil joins us live in the studio with the details.
So how are the races shaping up? Which party is enjoying the upper hand at this point?
Well, Cherry, at this point, it's hard to predict a clear winner. Political analysts say both rival parties have failed to come up with viable solutions in the wake of April's ferry tragedy, and that both parties have been experiencing internal struggle and playing dirty politics.
President Park Geun-hye's administration failed to win the support of the people as it struggled with appointing members for the new cabinet, and the main opposition party has shown political controversies when fielding candidates.
Every by-election is seen as a midterm evaluation of the incumbent government, but experts say both parties are failing to draw in voters, so the July by-elections may not prove to be a strong barometer of public sentiment. And if we look at some graphics, 6 are in Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province, 2 in the Gyeongsang-do provinces, conservatives' home turf, 4 in the Jeollado province's traditional home ground of liberal parties, and the remaining 3 are in the Chungcheong-do provinces. As for candidates, the ruling Saenuri Party has fielded candidates in all 15 constituencies, while the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy fielded 14.
And talking about dirty politics, as you just put it, just this week, the main opposition party was accused of nominating former police officer Kwon In-hee, and she's been linked with so many wrongdoings, plagiarism and perjury and all that, right?
That's right, and even more. And yes, the ruling Saenuri Party is expected to drive focus on this issue, and the main opposition will be left with no choice but to provide some kind of rebuttal for their pick.
Right now, I think the fact that the opposition party isn't doing so well, is a lot of it has to do with the people becoming very sort of concerned about the Kwon In-hee and the legitimacy of her candidacy. I think that's going to play a big role for this election.
So, Myung-gil, often we see in these elections opposition parties gathering, throwing out some candidates and going behind a single one, even at the last minute. Are we seeing that influence in this by-election?
Well, Sean, it's a useful tactic. As we saw today, the two opposition candidates for this whole Dongjak-bi district failed to unify, and with just a week left to go, it's not looking good.
If they were able to come up with a unified candidate, a unified front, form a unified front in these districts, perhaps in Dongjak-eul and Suwon-jeong, that's Yeongtong, that could have made some difference. But right now, it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
And Professor Han made an interesting point, saying that the future of the main opposition party's co-leader An Cheol-soo and his status in the party hinge greatly on this election.
So how is voter turnout expected to be during this time around, and what will the rival parties' strategies be regarding voter turnout?
Well, they expect the voter turnout to be low this time, maybe around the 30% level, partly because right now is the vacation season, and also the voters are still getting over last month's local elections, and with just a week left, political observers say rival parties will focus on emphasizing the capabilities of their candidates.
The ruling party will likely focus on advertising their candidates' capabilities to work for their districts, while the main opposition party will continue to emphasize that President Park Geun-hye's administration must be judged through this by-election.
Well, emphasizing the capabilities of candidates, that's just the way it should be, right? Anyways, we're just going to have to wait and see. A week away. Thank you very much, Myung-gil, for that report.
Sure.
Major U.S. and European airlines have suspended all flights to and from Israel due to safety concerns, of course, as the conflict in Gaza rages on for a third straight week.
We now turn to Paul Yee at the News Center for more on the situation. Paul, air traffic has been paralyzed over Israel. What triggered this dramatic response?
The American Federal Aviation Agency ordered all carriers to close their passenger routes to Tel Aviv on Wednesday after a rocket believed to have been fired by Hamas militants landed near the city's main international airport. This as the number of casualties from the escalating violence in Gaza has surpassed 680. Our Kim Min-ji has the details.
The grounding of flights came after a rocket landed just 1.6 kilometers away from the city's main air hub, Ben Gurion International Airport. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration has banned all American airliners from flying in or out of Tel Aviv for at least 24 hours beginning Tuesday U.S. time, and European aviation regulators strongly recommended a similar suspension. Israel called on the U.S. to lift the flight ban, saying the airport is safe, but Washington didn't budge, saying the government cannot overrule the FAA. Meanwhile, the conflict has now entered its third week, with Israel pounding Hamas targets in Gaza. The death toll of Palestinians has topped 630, including at least 100 children. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry were in the region to hold talks with leaders in hopes of finding a peaceful solution.
My message to Israelis and Palestinians is the same. Stop fighting, start talking, and take on the root causes of the conflict so we are not back to the same situation in another 6 months or a year.
And as for something that could potentially change the dynamics of the conflict, Israel confirmed that one of its soldiers was missing, raising the possibility that Hamas could use his return as a bargaining chip. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And a group of international investigators has arrived at the crash site of the Malaysian airliner that was downed over eastern Ukraine last week. A representative for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe said there were still human remains left around the large debris field from the Boeing 777. The European security watchdog has accused pro-Russia rebels who are guarding the crash area of tampering with the plane's wreckage. Western governments have threatened Russia with a broader range of sanctions over Moscow's backing of the insurgents who are suspected of shooting the passenger jetliner out of the sky. President Vladimir Putin has denied any Russian involvement in the air disaster. Flight MH17 was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur when tragedy struck, killing all 289 people on board. And turning now to Wall Street, the U.S. tech giant Apple has released another record-breaking earnings report with $7.7 billion in profit for the third fiscal quarter, falling just shy of market expectations. Apple posted a near 50% jump in sales in China on quarter, with worldwide iPhone sales reaching 35 million units. iPad sales, on the other hand, declined nearly 20% in the face of cheaper Android options. Analysts, meanwhile, were hopeful of Apple's next larger screen smartphone.
For Apple, it's a game changer. Phablets have been out there forever, but Apple had yet to enter that market. And I believe that a lot of consumers were buying Samsung-branded phones because of that screen size.
According to the Wall Street Journal, Apple has already ordered the production of up to 80 million units of its next-generation iPhone, which is rumored to launch this fall. And that wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome to sports. Let's kick things off with football. The Asian Football Confederation released the competition schedule for the next 3 years, and it looks like the 2018 World Cup qualifiers get started next June. 40 Asian teams will battle it out in the first round starting on June 11th next year, and the field will be whittled down to 12. And per the new AFC rules, those 12 teams will not only move on to the next World Cup qualifying round, but also clinch a spot in the 2019 Asian Cup. And as for the AFC, or the top-ranked AFC member nation, that's South Korea, they're still looking for a manager for the upcoming Asian Cup in January before looking ahead. And the success of the K-League helped South Korea nab the top AFC ranking. But sticking with the K-League Classic, Ulsan Hyundai faced off against Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors. Now, Ulsan's Kim Shin-wook started hot, getting off 4 shots to threaten the Jeonbuk goal, but the scores are level at the half. Jeonbuk striker Lee Dong-guk is stuffed, but his teammates find some chances. But by the end, both teams combined for 26 shots and no goals, and the match ends in a 0-0 draw. Meanwhile, rain hit the nation, but the KBO was still in action. Let's get to Wednesday's top matchup between the NC Dinos and Hanwha Eagles. We go to the first inning. It's NC's Eric Thames. He drives the first runner home, and NC also scores in the second, all before Felix Pie. He slams the solo shot for Hanwha. It's still 2-1 NC. We go to the next frame. Lee Tae-yang balks NC's Lee Jong-wook scores the run, and fast forward to the 7th. Thames hits a long ball for 2. Lee Ho-jun, he makes it back-to-back, and Hanwha makes a late run, but NC holds on to win this one 8-4. And looking at the other games, LG leads Kia 10-8 in the 9th inning. Meanwhile, Samsung leads Lotte 15-9 in the 8th inning. And finally, SK and Doosan had their game rained out. Finally, we go to the Ansan Uricard Pro Volleyball Cup, which continued on day 5. Let's jump straight into the action. For the ladies, it was Korea Expressway taking on IBK. Korea Expressway, coming off Monday's win, was fired up. They get the win in straight sets to advance to the semis. Meanwhile, for the men, Uricard and Hyundai Capital met for the must-win matchup. They split the first two, but Uricard takes the match 3-1 and advances. Well, that wraps it up for now. This has been Stephen Che. I'll see you back here later for more from the world of sports.
Hello, I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather update. While the central regions are dealing with monsoon rain, a heat wave warning remains in effect for some regions down south. More showers are in the forecast through tomorrow. Most parts of the central regions will get 20 to 70 millimeters of rain, but some areas could receive more than 100 millimeters. Showers will make their way down south, dropping at most 40 millimeters down south. Onto our radar map, some parts of the central regions are receiving 20 millimeters of precipitation per hour. This week is shaping up to be a soggy one after all. From Friday through Sunday, the nation is said to be indirectly affected by the 10th typhoon Matmo, and it could drop over 400 millimeters of heavy downpours in the central regions over the course of just 3 days. On to Thursday's readings. Seoul hits 28 while Daegu soars to a hot 33. On to other places. Daejeon makes it to 29 while Dokdo makes it to 27. Guys.
And that does it for this edition of Primetime News. Stay safe on the wet roads out there. I'm Kang Cheri.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.